Hello, welcome everyone. It's my honor and pleasure to have Akın Ünver as the Dean Speaker Series seminar. And I'm just going to say a couple of introductory and remarks about Dr. Ünver's background. Akın Ünver is an associate professor of international relations at Özyeğin University, specializing in conflict research, computational methods, and digital crisis communication. Since 2024, he is coordinator Deconspirator, a large Horizon EU project with 15 European universities and research labs, tackling foreign information manipulation across Europe. He is a fellow of Carnegie Endowment's Digital Democracy Network and an external scientific advisor to the European Cyber Conflict Research Incubator and the International Panel on Information Environment. Previously, he served as a research fellow at the Center for Technology and Global Affairs, Oxford University, and the GARD, Global Urban Analytics for Resilience Defense at the Alan Turing Institute. He is the Istanbul organizer of the Summer Institute in Computational Social Sciences and the founder of the Istanbul Twitter Developers Community. He has received numerous prestigious recognitions throughout his career, including the Science Academy of Turkey, Bilim Akademisi, Outstanding Young Scientist Award in 2021, and the Turkish Academy of Sciences TÜBA Promising Young Scientist Award in 2019. In the same year, his research was honored with the Defense Modeling Program Best Research Project Award by the Alan Turing Institute in London. Earlier accolades include Kadir Has University's Promising Young Scientist Award in 2018 and the Society for Digital Diplomacy's Best Research Article Award in 2017. His innovative work was also celebrated at the Oxford University Cybersecurity Program Research Showcase, where he received a research award in 2017. Additionally, his academic excellence was recognized early in his career with the Malcolm H. Kerr Best Dissertation Award in the field of social sciences from MESA in 2010. And again, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ünver. And please come here and the mic is yours.
Hocam, thank you very much. I would like to thank Sabancı University Faculty of Engineering and Natural Sciences for inviting me here. I'm a social scientist, so being invited by a Faculty of Engineering and Natural Sciences is a bit uncommon. But also my work in the last 6 to 7 years started to gravitate heavily towards the field of informatics and computer science as well. So, above all, Onur Hocam here, who's here right now, I started to collaborate quite extensively with computer scientists, computer engineers, information scientists as well. Today, I'm going to present a social scientist's view of developing a large-scale multi-method research project, and it is based on the conspirator, detecting and countering information suppression from a transnational perspective, which is the Horizon Europe project that I'm coordinating right now. Rather than a specific research article or a specific research project, I'm going to talk about harmonizing engineering, natural sciences with social sciences. So what would a social scientist do while creating, so to speak, a multi-method research project is the topic of my talk today. And how do I... Okay, so for maybe our friends, student friends of ours who are here right now, this project is about information warfare. You might call it disinformation, you might call it information manipulation, you might call it fake news. But basically, weaponization of information has been around for centuries. It goes all the way back to the Roman Empire, where certain propagandists tried to cause division and cause chaos among the local populace by triggering anger, triggering extreme behavior. And you would basically notice that in late 19th century and early 20th century, when contemporary newspapers, the tabloid press started to become more popular, we had a similar dynamic around those periods, especially in Europe and Northern America as well. People starting to, you would see here, this is the kind of fake news clown who is basically throwing around fake news articles on papers. And people are quite excited when getting that fake news as well. So basically, during crisis, emergencies, wars, conflicts, election periods, this idea of not just disinformation, not just fake news, but using information as a form of strategic communication and also strategic manipulation has been around for centuries. And in the past, using no bots, no trolls, no digital media, no computers, using simply newspapers, people were able to sow chaos during diplomatic escalation periods. They were able to steer the course of conflicts. The term fake news has been around at least for more than a century. And during the Cold War, the United States tried to counter Soviet propaganda by disseminating, printing large-scale false information, false news. The same thing was done by the Soviets in order to counter American propaganda. So we are dealing with a very, very old problem, which is as old, perhaps, as the history of war is. Now, today, the European Union, specifically European External Action Service, or EEAS, which is, in some ways, is the foreign ministry of the European Union, if you will, came up with the concept of foreign information manipulation and interference, and FIMI. And this FIMI concept right now is in European strategic documents, European political strategy documents, NATO military doctrines. So it's a very famous new concept. And what it tries to do is that it represents ever-evolving strategic and coordinated efforts by foreign actors to twist the truth in order to achieve their own political and economic goals. So FIMI goes beyond this information. It also takes into consideration accurate information, but the perspective has been shifted. For example, when people ask, how do you manipulate with accurate information? The best example is the closest example, Turkey and Greece. Right now, diplomatically, we are going through a very good period. There's cooperation. But in the last few years, or decade, more than a decade, we had these things called dogfights between planes in the Aegean. Greek jets, tailing Turkish jets tailing Greek jets. And it is a common occurrence. It's kind of like a game, if you will, a play, both sides trying to get the psychological upper hand by locking onto each other's planes. So this has been going around for at least 2 decades now. And it doesn't even go into the news because it's a common occurrence. Nobody really cares anymore because it's not a dangerous kind of strategic interaction. But imagine, especially in the 1990s, during election periods, both in Turkey and in Greece, some newspapers started to publish this accurate information at very, very large quantities, very close to election periods, in order to generate anger from among the population, manipulate their political behavior, their voting behavior. So by actually using an accurate information, just increasing the number of times that accurate information has been published and portrayed in public eye, both sides were able to manipulate elections, change voter behavior. So FIMI is broader than traditional concepts of misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, and tries to understand the broader system of how information news in general can be used as a form of interference and manipulation. Now, in order to do FIMI, if you are doing FIMI and not disinformation, you have to follow the European External Action Service lexicon and definitions. So that is basically what they want. Because FIMI is a distinctly EU concept, and in being an EU concept, it's a very distinctly European External Action Service concept, because the FIMI concept was created by Lutz Gürner, who was the head of strategic communication at the European External Action Service. But that lexicon, that terminology started to become popular beyond the United States, beyond the European Union as well. US State Department has adopted the FIMI framework last year and agreed to establish a joint monitoring and tackling institution that would partner up with the European External Action Service in the United States. Then Canada adopted the FIMI framework. They said, you know, the European Union FIMI framework is very good, very accurate, so let's get integrated with this framework. And then Ursula von der Leyen, who pitched the idea of EU information defense shield. So she's interested in generating this FIMI research or FIMI dynamics into creating a new European agency to tackle information warfare specifically. And in order to know more about how FIMI is different from disinformation, how FIMI is constructed, you know, in a policy manner, you have to read these European External Action Service reports on FIMI, basically FIMI threats. The first report came out 2 years ago. The second report came out earlier this year. There have been further FIMI reports on LGBTQA, on identity-based disinformation. So basically, to be able to do FIMI, we have to follow these EEAS terminologies and doctrines very specifically. And in the last few years, the idea of measuring disinformation, measuring fake news, and then building them into a framework to measure FIMI instances and compare countries by how much domestic information manipulation, how much foreign information manipulation, how often they suffer from this, how less frequently they suffer from this. So this is from the Digital Society Project, where they did expert surveys in 179 countries. This, on the other hand, belongs to the Global Disinformation Index, an institution created in the United States to specifically measure, count, monitor, and index disinformation incidents. So there are indicators: population exposure and susceptibility to Kremlin-led media, quality of systemic responses, digital warfare vulnerability. So long story short, FIMI is the new cool terminology in town. Everyone is doing it, everyone is interested in it, there is tons of research funding on FIMI. And so even though this started in the European Union, EEAS, it is now becoming a global instance. I was very recently invited to Singapore for an event by the Singaporean Ministry of Defense, where scholars from Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, China, Indonesia basically came together, India came together, and started to think of creating this kind of a system for Southeast Asia, a FIMI defense network for Southeast Asia. And in this EEAS terminology of information warfare, we come across a lot of war analogies. So there are strategies and tactics. So just in traditional warfare, in FIMI, you basically conduct strategic planning and use tactics to reach certain objectives. There are offensive FIMI actions and defensive FIMI actions. You attack another country or an institution in FIMI. This can be, there are cyber attacks, but FIMI is distinctly on spreading disinformation, using, disproportional information or news in order to put the other side into balance. There are targets. You attack in FIMI to destabilize an election or destabilize a diplomatic negotiation process, or basically discredit an institution or a person, basically. And there's an impact on society and governments. You demoralize, you divide, you distract the population. So when you read EEAS reports, when they construct the whole idea of FIMI, you actually identify a lot of war analogies or militaristic language, if you will. And if you are interested in doing FIMI as a computer scientist, for example, EEAS narrows you down into a very specific channel. If you're doing FIMI, you have to use disarm, you have to use OpenCTI, you have to use STIX2. What are those? So the idea of a kill chain, right? Disarm, deter. These are very militaristic language. If you read like NATO strategic documents, it's pretty much identical. So it basically gives you a sense that the EEAS FIMI framework is actually an increasingly kind of militaristic language. So if you are doing FIMI, EEAS says, you have to use the disarm framework. Disarm is a previous Horizon EU project which became so successful that they grew into a foundation and a company. Disarm is the open source master framework for fighting disinformation through sharing data, analysis, and coordinating an effective action. It is perhaps the world's most popular interface for logging, detecting, and reporting FIMI incidents across the world. OpenCTI is maybe familiar with those of you who work on cybersecurity engineering. It has nothing to do with FIMI. It is a cyber incident response interface, which is this interface, where DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks, and other types of malware attacks are being recorded in a centralized system. And STIX2 is an event actor flow generator for cyber incidents, both of which are being integrated into the FIMI framework. So basically, doing FIMI means following this very strict corridor of language, definitions, software, interface, and terms. So when fighting FIMI, the European External Action Service basically tells you that you have to conform to our understanding of FIMI. First, if you're going to improve our understanding, you first have to operate within these parameters and then change or improve the system from within. So they do what we call in international relations. I'm a social scientist who comes from international relations. So these ideas of red teaming, blue team being the good guys, red team being the bad guys. So war simulations, war exercises of FIMI. So in the planning phase, for example, the attackers, if you will, engage in certain actions, defenders engage in certain actions. There's a preparation phase. You try to understand the other side. You gear your objectives towards best manipulating the other side. The defending side also tries to prepare in anticipation for a FIMI attack. The execution phase. So all of these, TA15, TA0, so all of these action types come from the disarm framework. So this is basically the disarm kill chain. So there are levels to the preparation and execution phase of an information warfare act or FIMI act. So if you are trying to defend or monitor this, it gives you an opportunity to optimize your resources accordingly, if you will. So after reading all of these texts, after interviewing EEAS people who are in charge of building these models and people who are in charge of cooperating with NATO or United States, State Department, US Department of Defense, Canada, Australia, Japan, we arrive at a very rudimentary model of information warfare from the EEAS model. And this rudimentary model in international relations from the cybersecurity literature, which is another field where we cooperate a lot with computer scientists. Because in cybersecurity, in cyber attacks, cyber defense, as an international relations scholar, I can understand motivations, I can understand policy responses, I can understand the diplomatic bargaining processes of cyber incidents. But I'm not a computer engineer. I cannot understand defense architectures. I cannot understand cloud systems so well as a computer scientist. So this, perhaps the cybersecurity literature was, in a way, the first of more contemporary attempt where computer scientists and international relations and political sciences scholars started to collaborate. And some of the best works in cybersecurity literature are co-authored by computer scientists, information scientists, and international relations political sciences scholars. So here we end up with some core assumptions of information warfare so that we're able to model this. So the first thing that we know is that in information warfare, in FIMI, there are attackers and defenders. And attackers can be state actors, nation states that try to destabilize other nations. There can be non-state actors, hacktivists, technology companies, certain ideological groups who are seeking to promote certain agendas and disrupt societal norms. There is a defender rank. Again, governments can be defenders. You are trying to defend your elections. You are trying to defend your social stability away from FIMI actions. You can be international organizations like NATO, EU, OECD, IMF in order to build international collaborations against FIMI. You can be private sector entities, media organizations, technology companies whose interest is the stability of international information space. Civil society and NGOs such as the Global Fact-Checking Federation, an international consortium of fact-checkers from all around the world. Turkey is a member as well with Tate and Doğruluk Payı. You have Global Disinformation Index as well. But on the attacker side, you have what we call Internet Research Agency in Russia, for example. All countries have these kind of offensive information warfare institutions. So one, you have a range of attackers and defenders. And then you have to create a framework in which you calculate attacker benefit and defender cost in information warfare. Most of this is what we are importing from the cybersecurity literature, because in the cybersecurity literature as well, we have this, why is attacker attacking in cyberspace? Because they have something to gain. Okay, but what are they gaining specifically? What will defender lose if they fail to defend, for example? So here we have attacker payoffs, destabilizing the other party, basically when you destabilize the other side or you basically dominate the other side's information space to spread your own framework, your own propaganda, or your own ideology, you have a range of benefits, for example. And especially when the time constraint is more, meaning that you have to make a decision or in a shorter amount of time, diplomatic crises, diplomatic escalations, natural disasters, war, terrorism incidents, election periods, in which you don't have time to fact check. You don't have time to defend against an information warfare. So that is when information warfare becomes the most damaging, when the other side is distracted in another incident that they don't have time to fact check, they don't have time to verify. So an attacker has an incentive to destabilize the other side when the other side has a very short window of response. And the defender aims to fact check, do community detection, LLM-based methods to early on detect, and then when they detect the attacker, name and shame them in the international audience so that they are being deterred to carry out the same attack again. And what happens when attacker wins? What happens when defender loses? So based on the European External Action Service lexicon, when attacker succeeds, it sways elections, creates societal discord. In Europe, we have a lot of instances in which fake news or disinformation, or even accurate information whose proportion has been shifted, FIMI incident, leading to large-scale city riots, election interference. It doesn't have to happen if you're going to vote for A, you go vote for B. If disinformation or FIMI instances sow sufficient mistrust in you, and you don't even go and vote, you don't even go to the polls, that is also a successful incident. There are economic gains. You disrupt markets, you discredit certain companies, you provide financial advantages or for attackers, disadvantages for the defenders. Eroding public trust and creating a fragmented information environment are all goals that the EEAS feels that, when I win, this is what I get. And defenders are basically interested in attacker not being able to carry out anything that they win. So preservation of democratic integrity, preservation of public trust in the financial system, in the election system, in the political system, trust in institutions, trust in the officials of those institutions, essentially. I can get a little bit technical because we have a very distinguished group of scholars here as well. But basically, here you have to start calculating short-term payoffs, long-term payoffs, future communication effectiveness, first mover advantage, preventive action. So in international relations scholarship, we have this term called anarchic international system. The international system is anarchy, meaning if here out in the street somebody steals from you, you go to the police find that person, and that person is punished. In international relations, you don't have a higher authority, which means that if you're attacked unjustly or illegally, there are some institutions that you can go to, but the enforcement capacity of those institutions are very weak. So in an internationally anarchic system, every country has to protect itself. And this creates an international environment in which attacker always has the advantage. So we have to understand that the information space is an anarchic system. There's no international authority that you can complain to that will prevent the attacker from carrying out that attack again. There is no deterrence mechanism other than your ability to self-defend. So information space is a space where attacker always has the advantage. Now, reputational costs. You carried out an information attack on me. I caught you, I defended successfully, and I started to name and shame you. This country is carrying out FIMI. This country is guilty of manipulating the information space. And so you are thought to suffer from a reputational penalty when what you're doing becomes exposed successfully each single time. Now, this is a discussion or a debate whether reputational costs really exist in information warfare, but at least that is what EEAS thinks, because otherwise, why would you fact check? think about this. Like, I do, some of you do, like community detection, LLM, early detection models of disinformation. Yes, we catch an actor, we detect a cluster which belongs to country A, B, C, D, E. Fine, we caught all of this. Well, why are we doing this? Why are fact checkers trying to fact check? Why are computer engineers trying to detect large-scale, big data information manipulation? Because we want them to become exposed so that they become deterred for carrying out that instance in the future. And so we are expected to find somewhere some logic or some payoff in naming and shaming. And basically, all of us want that our really painful, highly technical work actually ends up protecting what we want to be protected and deterring some nation to carry out what they have been carrying out. So let's check for time. Now it's 13:13. Yücel Hocam, how much do we have? Until 30? Strict, including Q&A.
Yes, including
Okay. 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 Now, I have exposed the problem from a social point of view, but then although this problem is a political problem, social problem, it cannot be resolved by social scientists alone because of the technologies through which these actions are being more and more problematic. So we need interdisciplinary collaboration, from which point, 20 years ago, if I went to my department head and I said, I'm collaborating with computer scientists, he or she would say, are you crazy? Why are you collaborating with computer science? You're a social scientist, stay there, do social science. Today, we don't have that luxury. We have to reach out to as many different fields as possible. In our research group, we not only have computer scientists, we also have physicists, theoretical physicists that are able to model complex behavior in ways I don't understand, but I know that I need them, basically. So what would be a socio-computational approach to solving the FIMI problem? Now, in our project, The Conspirator, we are dividing the phases of an information attack in the way that EAS does into more phases. We identify more phases. And in each phase, we have interdisciplinary collaboration. So in the formulation phase of an attack, this is a military doctrine flowchart. This military doctrine flowchart belongs to Russia. And this is basically a translation of the Gerasimov doctrine, which belongs to the Russian general, I forget his first name, Gerasimov, where he is identifying conducts information warfare in the bridge between non-military measures to military measures. So in the non-military measures, you have formation of coalitions and unions, economic sanctions, breaking diplomatic relations, formation of political opposition. So when peace leads to conflict, when stability leads to war, you have several steps you have to take to escalate in non-military terms, so that, one, diplomatically you have a space to diffuse the tensions and bring the situation back to peace, but also you escalate rationally, which is why you have to do slowly all of those escalation periods. So it's very important to note that in the Gerasimov doctrine, information warfare sits as the final frontier between non-military measures and military measures. If information warfare actions fail or you cannot get a result out of those, you start fighting. Which is why I think FIMI has started to become so important for all of the people. But then, how do we understand why attackers engage in FIMI action? We have to go read their strategic doctrines, strategic documents, political speeches. This is one area where, even though I use it a lot, LLMs are not sufficient. You still have to go do old school discourse analysis. You have to read manually because a lot of the dynamics in strategic documents are still in between lines, hidden. So we do strategic narrative theory and agenda setting theory. We import cognitive warfare principles and modern theories of perception and influence theories that go all the way back to World War I. It's a very strong scholarship. We focus on multi-level target audience analysis. We focus on demographics, psychographic, and cultural profiling. These are all still pretty much qualitative methods. And we basically do doctrinal network analysis, still not the computational network analysis, but basically the flow of how different doctrines across countries have influenced each other. So for example, the Gerasimov doctrine, conducting information warfare as a last resort, comes from the Rumsfeld doctrine in the United States, where during the Iraq War's first phases, he started to think of ways of using social media and cell phones as a way to divide and mislead militia groups, for example. Rumsfeld doctrine gets the same inspiration from disinformatia, a Cold War theory or Cold War doctrine that the Soviets used quite extensively. And then it comes back to the American early NATO doctrine of using media as a form of stoking division, for example. So doctrines affect each other. In order to understand how those doctrines affect each other, you have to do a doctrinal network analysis, comparative propaganda analysis. It can be computational, but still we need old school ethnographers and visual ideology scholars in order to properly do comparative propaganda analysis. Discourse analysis, archival work, we do quite extensively. Then we go on to phase two, the launching phase of information attack. Now, here we take a lot from the diffusion of innovations theory and network public space framework, in which how you mobilize resources, your technology, your engineers, your computers, your doctrine people, in order to launch the information attack is heavily dependent on your existing capabilities. You focus on dynamic capabilities for deployment, including adaptive algorithmic targeting. So gradually our work process starts to become more and more computational, but still it is very much in the military sciences domain, because essentially you're preparing for the launch of an attack. So we do capability maturity models, dynamic social network analysis, gradually more quantitative and computational, game theory models. This comes from a book chapter that we wrote with Professor Arhan Ertan from Boğaziçi University, where we did a game theoretical modeling of information warfare. I can send you the chapter if you're interested in this. But basically, there are iterations of actions, and in each actions, there's a different payoff, whether some action succeeds, some action doesn't succeed. So basically, we do, again, a very multi-method survey of information attack launch. Then we have to talk about the spread of the information. This is probably where our projects start to become more and more computational. But still, we have to take into account framing theory and the social contagion model so that we can understand algorithmic gatekeeping and platform affordances. Because depending on what the platform architecture is, phenotype and the people who are influenced by that phenotype changes quite significantly. Now you start caring about user behavior, platform architecture. You are interested in very contemporary computational social science terms such as virality thresholds, echo chambers, filter bubbles. You get API-based tools to compare disinformation spread across social media. You do agent-based models because now we're dealing with not with perfectly rational agents, but bounded rationality agents. We do predictive network analysis. You use machine learning to forecast virality and penetration rates. This is the phase of the FIMI instance that probably most of you will be more familiar with. And now we focus on defender actions. We incorporate a lot from resilience theory and crisis communication models. institutional and societal adaptability theories. If you suffer from one problem, you adapt to it. So in the second phase, you're not as vulnerable to whatever you're suffering from. Robustness of verification systems, civic literacy, and institutional countermeasures. And here, we kind of take a step back to our social sciences a little bit as well, because we need a behavioral analysis of fact checkers, a little into psychology, how fact checkers understand and interpret, how they prioritize. There was some work we did with Tate-Or, for example, in this concept. Network disruption simulations, then we go deeper into computer science and computer cybersecurity defense architecture. And then policy mapping, which is done by political scientists, not just by political scientists, but think tanks, the policy research institutes who are specialized in translating all of this into a form that policymakers can understand. The socio-cognitive impact assessment. Here we collaborate a lot with advanced research institutes and labs to do psychometric scaling. We do some eye tracking studies in order to understand how people read the news when they read the news in a certain way. For example, if the social media architecture is such that you get your feed scrolling down, FIMI is recorded in your cognitive system in a different way compared to if you scroll up or if you scroll sideways, for example. Each form of interaction you engage in with the interface of the platform, you consume this information or information warfare in a different way. We conduct longitudinal surveys across 20 EU nations in order to understand the subnational characteristics of FIMI exposure. So, for example, can we say that in the Porto region of Portugal, Chinese FIMI is more successful compared to this part in Latvia, for example. So we have to do longitudinal large-scale surveys for it. And then we have to measure the effects of this. So once FIMI is consumed, then what happens? Not all successful FIMI operations lead to some kind of visible impact. So even if a FIMI instance spreads a lot on social media or becomes liked or becomes retweeted, whatever, it still doesn't change the opinion of the people. It still doesn't automatically lead into a riot or a political crisis. So what additional things have to happen for a successful information operation to actually lead into some kind of behavioral change or cognitive change, for example? So we have a phase in which we measure the effects. And then finally, the deterrence phase. Let's say you were unable to defend. The attacker successfully conducted FIMI on you, destabilize the elections, destabilize your political system, sowed mistrust, and for one way or another, you suffered as a result of it. What do you do? So attribution and deterrence theories are very strong theories in international relations. It goes all the way back to the cybersecurity literature, but also goes back to the nuclear war phase. Deterrence is a huge thing in international relations. What should I do without fighting so that I convince the other side to not do the attacking action again? Do I demonstrate power? Do I demonstrate my capacity in fact-checking? Do I display how wonderful my engineers are? I can immediately detect your theory. Is it that? So attribution and deterrence theory is very empty as far as FIMI is concerned. There are public diplomacy strategies, how to successfully name and shame an attacker so that it is actually named and shamed properly. It depends on my country's media power, diplomatic capital, our influence. And we do attribution forensics, qualitative and ethnographic media analysis, again, agent-based models, and finally, policy impact assessment. So I'm out of time. I would like to open this up for questions, but basically, we problematized the whole FIMI link in this way and try to This is why we need almost all of the disciplines that you can find in a large enough university. So The Conspirator, the project, brings about 15 institutions from about 12 or 13. We added new partners, I forgot the number. But we're a pretty crowded consortium in which it is coordinated at Özyeğin by me, but we have psychometric assessors, survey specialists, computer engineers, we have data scientists that are separate from computer engineers. We have spatial contagion modelers that are physicists. So it's a very large and diverse group of people. We began, so we are research and innovation group. Hopefully we can devise some kind of tool or a method to help Europe defend against FIMI. We started, our first year is almost over. We are going to end by the end of 2026. And just to mention our partners, Adcogito is an advanced behavioral lab in Lithuania who specializes in psychometric assessment, eye tracking studies, cognitive impact of FIMI. Center for the Study of Democracy, Bulgaria, a think tank. They do policy analysis and policy communication in Southeast Europe. CIDOP, Barcelona, our Spanish think tank partners who specialize in information warfare, wargaming, and scenario building for the European Union. Ekonomi Dış Politika Araştırmalar Merkezi is an Istanbul-based institute who specializes in defense and war policy. University of Amsterdam is our data science and computer science hub. Brussels University, VUB. Our survey specialists, White Research, they always like to put themselves into the middle, slightly larger. They're all dissemination communication partners. GRAS became University of Georgia, our Georgian partners who specialize in fact-checking in the Caucasus setting. University of Heidelberg, our China specialists, Instituto Affari Internazionali, another think tank who specializes in Russian information manipulation. This is me. Groningen University, they are our platform architecture specialists, how different social media platforms affect the spread of FIMI. And Riga University specializes in Russia and China military doctrines, especially as it relates to the Baltic region. So this is from me. Thank you so much for listening to me. And then let's open up the floor for Q&A. Thank you so much.
So in the past, I was working on opinion mining, and I was wondering what is the effect of opinions in this framework, because I'm also involved in a cost project called Opinion, and social scientists are still discussing what is an opinion, like for a year. Because, for example, recently Elon Musk described his stance on AfD German elections, and that was a big issue, while Ursula von der Leyen was able to give her opinion on Italian elections freely. So there was like a contradiction and different reactions. I was wondering how that fits into this framework.
Yeah. This is a discussion we do quite extensively with the EEAS as well as the State Department people in the US. There's nothing wrong with opinion or stance. If somebody believes in something or has an opinion on something, if it's not against the law, this cannot be part of FIMI framework. That's my argument, because FIMI framework has to be a hostile action. It has to have a bad intention, which is not just an opinion that I don't like, but it has to have visible impact and damage on me. So stance detection, opinion detection, we still do it old school, pen and paper, qualitative discourse analysis. I know there are a lot of new advances in computer science on this. I'm not familiar with the most recent advances in computer science, but we still do it very old school, kind of reading the actual text for hours and hours and hours style kind of opinion detection. But there are some in Europe who want to also consider anti-European opinion or anti a certain political ideology opinion as part of the FIMI, we researchers argue that, for example, Elon Musk, basically favoring the AfD, for example, the far-right party in Germany, is problematic because he is the owner of a platform, and now he's going to become a minister in the United States, a de facto minister. But should we catch this as a FIMI action? When you start doing it, you also have to, so there's this concept of actor agnosticism in platform architecture. So any bad action that you want to track, you have to track not just from Russia and China, but from all actors. Are we also going to start tracking opinion or favoring a certain party over another by all European ministers? And that's when the EAS starts to get, maybe not. So it's a very politically charged question, your question. Where does opinion and stance, fit into this? My opinion is that it has to be separated from FIMI framework, because manipulation and interference, you may call it an interference because a foreign official is trying to favor a political party. In this case, because Elon Musk is a de facto minister, an official, and a technology company head, that counts as interference. But if a civil society actor from Russia tries to, express an opinion saying that the European Union, I don't really like it, it cannot count as FIMI. That's actually my view, but it is being discussed, in a very heated fashion in Brussels.
If it's fine. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was pretty nice. My question is a bit technical. So in phase one, I think you mentioned that you were trying to use large language model to
what?
In the first phase, I think you mentioned you were trying to use LLM to analyze political speech, but at that time you mentioned it was not effective. So my question has been, any research has been done on LLM to analyze whether there is a bias, or it's because it has been trained on a huge amount of data. So most probably it has been trained on many fake news or other FIMI attacks. So this can change the model perspective. So did you consider this perspective about it? Or is there any research? Thank you.
If I understand correctly, because we are doing LLM, the fake news, I couldn't understand the question.
So while training large language model, it has been trained over maybe the entire internet, where there are many fake news, where many FIMI attack already exist, trying to force some existing opinion that make large language model a bit biased towards specific opinion, and this may affect the analysis of the political speech toward a specific direction.
So in one of our work packages, we are trying to build, if you will, an event horizon. In my previous project with Onur Hocam, we tried to use social media data in war zones in order to create what we call an event data. Who attacked whom, at what time, with what weapons, linked with whom. So you basically try to establish an event horizon data set. This country did FIMI here, they used this methods, and using this text with the other year. So you basically establish a calendar of events, if you will. So in one of our work packages, we are interested in using LLMs to extract FIMI text from the entirety of the news archives, beginning with the time they were first digitized, so that we can train a model that can be unleashed into live, detection as a radar using those methods. You are very right in the sense that so far it's yielding biased results, and instead of catching FIMI, it catches news articles that are linguistically written in a similar fashion to FIMI, which is we have taken into consideration. This is an experiment we are trying to resolve right now. We haven't been able to succeed. We have, I think, 1.5 years more to continue with those experimentations. You're absolutely right. This is a frontier we haven't been able to resolve properly. But instead of detecting live FIMI, which is not something that we are promising, we think it's a very difficult thing to both scale and also to do a multilingual fashion of it. And also, I think if I remember correctly, you mentioned something like when people realize that their language is being used to detect FIMI, they very successfully change their language so that they become undetectable the next day, which is, you know, a huge, huge problem. We're basically interested only in a retrospective account. We have positives, negatives, false positives already in place. So we're just interested in doing this like a retrospective way of using LLMs to do it. Real time using AI machine learning, will we be able to do it? Probably at some point. At least our lab right now, we are facing more limitations than solutions that we have. This is something we're trying to solve, but thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Hocam. It was very informative. I was going to ask if the framework can also detect the actual target of the attack. As in, for example, if country X has formed a recent alliance with country Y, and they announced that like the president of X announced that we are very good friends, we are supporting Y, etc. And there has been afterwards, an attack happens against Y, and this also affects the public view and general view on country X, and maybe the actual target was X because they're allies. Does the framework and network uncover these kind of alliances and targets, different targets?
Yes, you know, why would all of a sudden you have so much FIMI in Poland and not in Italy, for example, right? So there are mathematical ways of automatically detecting this probably. You can do a lot of like features and proxies related to number of diplomatic visits recently, a very frequent thing we use in political science, joint voting behavior in the United Nations. If two countries vote together in the United Nations, it's a proxy for them having good relations generally. Definitely. Qualitatively, we have tons of methods of doing it. The problem is now that we are dealing with an EU-wide scale with in an age where information is just like so large that we can't deal with it in qualitative methods. How do we automate it? Or at least like how do we, you know, successfully, I'm not even talking about like prediction because like it basically, you know, kind of demoralizes me, but even the proper measurements of that incident in an automated and large-scale fashion is a very difficult job. I think it's doable. Right now, we're trying to build kind of like a seed data set from qualitative researchers who are Russia specialists, China specialists, EU specialists, Italy specialists from almost all countries, so that we have a qualitative in an Excel format, a seed kind of data with instances, proxies. Hopefully one day we can use it to automate it in a way. Qualitatively, we have the answer to your question. Quantitatively, I think it's very possible. We're not there yet.
Thank you.